Howdy, howdy! We are live on a Friday night with some more Star Trek Enterprise Season 1 to talk about. So we had 9 episodes last week. We got 9 more this week, and then we'll finish off Season 1 next week with the final 8. But Dave, are you ready to dive through episodes 10 through 18?
Yes, let's discuss these monstrously long seasons.
Monstrously long.
I love it.
That's par for course for Star Trek. 26 is the standard for our franchise.
It's a nice change up. I'm into it, and I have things to say. I have thoughts. Let's do it.
Let's get to it then. I'm Fatheree.
This is Dave.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 271st installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new. And tonight, we don't have any new Star Trek to talk about, not until Disco gets here in April, so we're continuing our Star Trek Enterprise Season 1 series of podcasts. We're going to be focusing on episodes 10 through 18, so we're going to be talking everything from Fortunate Son on up to Rogue Planet.
I feel like it's bookended by 2 of the weaker ones, but there's some really dope stuff in between.
Yeah. So last round was kind of a mixed bag for us, and here I think there's more that I enjoy in this batch than last
for
week.
sure for me. I feel like the track record is up, and there's several episodes I liked unexpectedly and hadn't seen in it's been long enough that I since I first watched them that I there were several I was like, have I seen this? And then I would see a bit or two and I'd be like, yeah, okay, I remember that. But I think I forgot some of the cool stuff. So
yeah, for the most part, Dave saw some of these episodes one time many years ago.
Many moons.
This is the first time I've watched these in 7 years, but I've calculated, I think this is my 6th time. I've seen every episode of Enterprise at least 5 times before now. So
it's intense.
And I just watched all of these 3 times, so I've seen all these episodes at least 9 times.
For the Enterprise haters, that's like you just described their torture.
I mean, that's true of any TV show.
That's true.
But I'm curious to get into this and see, because Dave and I haven't discussed this, so, I want to see, where we overlap, where we differ, and I hope people in the chat watching live weigh in, and anyone listening later, feel free to comment your thoughts. Before we dive into all of it, I want to give a big thank you, though, to the Tex-Trek Patreon supporters. That's Starfleet Sohel, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Dog, Geek Filter, Earl Grey Trekkie, Quarkspar, Stephanie Durantas, Braxton, Chuck A, and our anonymous supporters. To thank y'all, we like to have a monthly Patreon watch party. If you're watching us live on Friday night, our next one is tomorrow, January 20th, so you're in luck. You can sign up for the Patreon, come in at whatever tier you can help out at, but if you come in as little as $2 a month, that will still get you into the Patreon watch party every month. And we're going to be watching a DS9 episode tomorrow and a Strange New Worlds episode tomorrow. I don't know exactly what we're watching. Robbie might have some opinions, or we might vote, or we might just trust in the shows and see if we randomly select something, randomly draw a number. How good of an episode will it be? I think that's kind of a fun experiment. I trust those shows. Those are 2 really good shows. So
I'd be interested to try that.
We'll see what happens tomorrow. So that's going to be a little later than usual. It's going to be 6 p.m. Central, because we want to make sure that Robbie can be there. So please check that out if you are in the Tex-Trek Patreon. It's always a fun time to hang out and chat, and anyone that can go off mute and chat with us, and we've had some fun episodes that we've watched in there. I think one of the highlights was when we were watching Star Trek Prodigy, and we had Aaron Welke pop in and join us on an episode that he had written. So I encourage people to take part in those if you're supporting us on Patreon. It's always fun.
Yeah, I feel like we can't generally do better than when we get the showrunner on our show to talk about the show.
Jill's giving me a hard time about it's bumping into the 49ers game. And
Listen, are you a Trekkie or are you not, Jill?
Well, that's the 49ers are like the Starfleet team, right? They're also based in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was like, that seems like a stretch to me, but sure.
Maybe they should be the 47ers.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else in as far as news. It's still cool that Discovery is going to premiere here, but we don't know when. Just sometime during the second week of March during South by Southwest. We'll be talking Disco in April whenever it's up on Paramount Plus and the final season is out. But yeah, Dave,
we can dive in.
Let's go ahead and get started then. What's the first episode out the gate is Fortunate Son, right? So that's
great CCR song.
Yeah. Interesting name for a ship. I thought song was like on the radio when they were. I was gonna say when Rick Berman and Brandon Braga were writing this, but surprisingly, this is one of the rare season 1 episodes not written or no, they don't have like the story credit or anything. But Fortunate Son is actually written by James Duff, directed by Geordie LaForge himself, LeVar Burton, and the synopsis on it: Enterprise is sent to assist the Fortunate, an Earth freighter that has been attacked by the Nausicaan pirates. Or there's no "the" in there, just added that. Has been attacked by Nausicaan pirates. Mm-hmm. But the Fortunate may not be as innocent as it seems. So, Dave, why don't you go first? What was your thoughts on Fortunate Son?
So I was happy to see Mayweather kind of get what I felt like was his sort of first serious spotlight in it, which is to say, who's that actor?
Anthony Montgomery.
Anthony Montgomery, yes.
Who I champion all the time. I feel like everyone's dismissive of him, but I'm like, that dude I think that dude was very underutilized.
I feel the same way about Harry Kim and some others, but they put in some good work, and they get their moments. They don't get the sort of the lead stuff always, but they sometimes get an episode. And yeah, I thought he did really good in this as he bonds with and kind of brings out a little bit of the humanity in the sort of vengeful exo of the Fortunate.
Matt Ryan.
Yes, the extremely memorable name of Matt Ryan. I thought this had an interestingly pretty solid moral quandary of, basically it's about like frontier justice kind of stuff. These guys are, getting regular pirate attacks, and they're defending themselves, and the captain's out of commission and healing up, and so they've got to, he wants to go and actually track down the ship that came after him last time and, send him a message. He wants to blow him up. And they're pretty solidly, I guess, armed for, a freighter. And maybe it's a little bit predictable that it's going to have to happen the way it does. But yeah, they've got a captive Nausicaan, and they're basically beating up, which is like movie and TV kind of torture. You just punch a guy a bunch. And there's also a little subplot though with like Mayweather. He kind of throws some shade his way about like, oh, you left the life, your parents probably didn't really want you to go. They probably just said that so you'd feel better. And so he gets to do some acting and get pissed, and, and also probably, at least it probably stings a little bit because he's like, well, wait, what if there's some truth to it?
Right.
So
right.
That's my basic take. I do think it's a slightly lesser outing of these episodes we're talking about, but I did think it was a very solid episode with some stuff I liked. How about you, Fatheree?
I guess I would qualify it as a like it, don't love it, but that's where I would put most of the season 1 episodes, I think. So I feel like I would just use that too often.
I get that, but I will say this, that like I think like starting I think maybe as of just the next episode, I like all of them kind of notably more. So I'll say, that much at least.
But I do always kind of look forward to watching this when I'm rewatching Enterprise, because I like seeing the Nausicaans. I love seeing the design of the freighter ship. I like that it kind of looks like a junky cargo ship, but you see like the Star Trek technology, like it has like nacelles and deflectors, and I like seeing like the Nausicaans, and it was using the universe. Like we don't know much about those dudes who stabbed Picard, but
I don't know that we knew. I don't know that we know much about them after this either.
Well, now that we know that like they're pirates and that they were a problem in the 22nd century, I mean that's.
Yeah, I guess that's true. They didn't even nothing like even that much was mentioned on Picard. They were just like a tough guy.
Yeah, but they needed some pirate bad guys in here, so it was a good choice to use the Nausicaans.
Right.
A good writing choice that Rick Berman and Brandt and Braga probably didn't have anything to do with because their names aren't on this one. So that's also, I guess, a bit concerning, and was concerning for me in 2001, watching along in real time. I liked the football at the beginning. Like we typically don't see American football in Star Trek. I guess because it is such like a United States only thing, and Star Trek is more.
Well, I was going to say so is
general.
baseball, but that's not true of baseball.
Yeah, that's not true of baseball. And Star Trek loves baseball, so that kind of makes sense. But yeah, it did make Enterprise seem a bit more grounded and closer to real life and modern day. I thought that it was interesting that they have so many scenes in this episode that's just the fortunate crew. You typically don't do that in television. A lot of times they would have like one of the Enterprise regulars is for some reason they're taken hostage on the Fortunate, or for some reason they're on the ship with them, and so they would be on the bridge during like the Fortunate versus Nausicaan battle scenes and stuff like that. But they did not do that here, and I think it's a more interesting episode for it, that they would have like these entire sequences of just these Fortunate people, and it's kind of like, oh, I don't know any of these dudes. I'm just kind of like a fly on the wall, just like watching this,
But yeah, having seen that opening scene with the captain and his first officer, that's who it is, right? Playing football?
Yeah.
Throwing it in 0G, or not 0G, but low gravity maybe? Or no, I guess it is 0G, or just that football arc a little bit.
It's slower than they were saying like, oh yeah, we don't keep it like turned all the way up to Earth sea level because we like having that, we like being able to throw the football
have some fun.
Long. Yeah.
But because that scene kind of grounded them, it's like, what is that, save the cat kind of Hollywood thing? Like if somebody saves a cat, no matter what else, you kind of know they're a basically decent person, if you see it early on. Just a Hollywood adage. It's, I think, the name of a book. But yeah, we saw these guys playing some football, seeming like two regular good guys. And so I think we have a little bit more investment in this crew because we know they're kind of slightly salt of the earth, normal blue-collar dudes.
I like the communication relay thing at the beginning when Forrest is talking to Archer, and it's a garbled communication, and they're saying like, oh, you're gonna have to drop another subspace amplifier soon. And I like that because communication was kind of a thing in the original series when sometimes they would be like so far away, it was they were having to wait on orders and stuff. So that was something that was concerning to me watching Enterprise for the first time in 2001. Would they ever like address that type of stuff? So that's a recurring thing throughout season 1, and will play a big part in an upcoming episode.
Is this the first time they mention it, Fatheree? Because okay, and I think there's another point when they were like going to, or this was the one they were about to drop it, and then they got the emergency call, right?
Right, and that was another good thing because if this is the first Warp 5 ship, Earth ship, and they were taking off. Going, exploring, going places where you would think no humans had been before. Why would they be running into humans? So I like that they had to have them turn around for a little bit. And there's a couple of times in season 1 and season 2 when Enterprise is ordered to like turn around back to Earth, and it is kind of convenient because then it kind of helps explain like why they're close to other things later. Like why would they be? Oh, they kind of had to go out of their way, and they were the only ship fast enough to get there. So it totally makes sense. So good with all of that.
Fatheree, I'm going to probably mention several times during this podcast or this live stream that, you know how I talked often during Deep Space Nine about them having sort of organic continuity, something would lead into something a few episodes later. And they're already, I can see, doing more of that on this than I expected. That he dropped a reference to Archer's comment from what, 1 or 2 episodes back.
Yeah, from Breaking the Ice. Yeah.
And then this, the subspace amplifier things, those will recur, later on in the season. So just a cool, both cool examples of, giving a sense that, oh yes, this is that shared world. These episodes aren't so standalone that they don't, inform each other, even if it's not heavily influenced. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I was looking at my notes here, and I see that I mentioned enjoying the scale of the Fortunate. You know what else is that the Enterprise doesn't really have a reputation at this point, and I think that's kind of cool. And
yeah,
to the
and
point where
and Starfleet still kind of treated like a newer thing when they're
right?
like these guys just running cargo, like they don't really know what to think of Starfleet. That's something like they haven't interacted with much.
Right, and Ryan, who's clearly built up a lot of anger, he maroons like 4 of their dudes and just leaves them behind in that cargo container.
That was a cool idea, by the way. I like that idea of like you put a hole in a container and it'll slowly depressurize and you trap people in there and.
Yeah, it's kind of sneaky, but half the time, or not more than half, much more than half the time. They're like, oh, you're messing with the Enterprise, the flagship of the fleet. And that reputation is absolutely not part of them yet. These freighter dudes are like, F you.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. And these are the guys who, you think they're the ones who they want to leave Earth. They want to go out into space and get rich and, like, colonize planets and, like make a name for themselves, make, like, a career for themselves or whatever. And we see, like, a lot of, like, weird, libertarian offshoots of humanity throughout the 23rd and 24th century in Star Trek. And so I think these are kind of the fledgling, foundations of that culture.
And I'm sure it's meant to reflect our own, Old West
totally.
and that westward expansion. And various incentives.
And you can also kind of parallel that, kind of like the dehumanization that a lot of Western settlers inflicted upon the natives that we genocided off of this land, and you can see a very similar dehumanization. It's odd to say dehumanization when you're talking about an alien, but y'all know what I mean. So
the aliens are very human on Trek, so yes, I know what you mean.
Yeah, like Kirk said, everyone's human.
Fatheree, did you feel like... Do you sympathize with them, though, the plight that they're in? Like, they don't have anybody to turn to keep these pirates off. They've got to... What are they going to do? They've got to put, like, a little bit of fear of God into them, it seems like. Morals and stuff, like, might fall by the wayside.
My criticism of the episode, I think, comes... I wish that this wasn't actually as Travis focused. I wish that they would have gave Terra Nova to Travis when he was all worried about, like, the colony, and he was like, yeah, I was like a space boomer, I kind of, like, had respect for, these colonists and the people that were brave enough to go be, like, the first colony and what happened to them. I kind of wish that they had made Terra Nova more of Travis's episode, and then here kind of did more of, like, Archer and Ryan bonding and kind of have Archer, Archer's the one who, he wants to break out and be his own man and be independent from the Vulcans.
Right.
And he has, like, this Vulcan bigotry, and he has, like, all this baggage of, his father, and I think that would actually be a better juxtaposition against what the Matt Ryan character is all on about, and with his parents and his bigotry to the Nausicaans and his lack of ability to be able to, like, ask for help and ask for support, and that strength to show your vulnerability, and that strength that you have to have when you do ask your support system for help. And I wish that could have been a kind of a learning experience for Archer and the point where he is in his arc and development instead of Travis. But it ended up being a Travis episode, and I don't like Travis when it's just kind of like the dopey, like, space boomer stuff. Like, when I think it's more interesting when he's doing literally anything else. So
right, but I don't know that I agree with you on that. I like the space boomer stuff, even though it kind of makes him a little bit like it's almost like he's doing a bit, like it feels a little scripted. But to me, it's what they're talking about is still fairly interesting. I guess I'll have to see more episodes of the kind you're talking about just to see how I warm to it or don't. But yeah, like, and obviously they wanted to do a Mayweather episode, so he got the episode. But I kind of like your idea.
And then two quick things. I like that there's a 47 in here. Travis says, try bypassing circuit L47. That might be the first 47 we've hit in Enterprise.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that we talk about like how good the food, and Doug Drexler, designer of the Enterprise, his late wife, Dorothy Duder, they named the Duderstadt class of Starfleet ship in Picard Season 3 after her, but she was in charge of the food on Star Trek Enterprise. And the steak and potato that Ryan eats in the mess hall, it does look delicious every time I watch this episode. I get
Yeah, and he leaves it. He leaves it, though. He, like, has a few bites, and they kind of get into an argument. Man, I'd take the plate.
Yeah.
He said they never get food that good on the freighter. Take it, you torturer,
He's
you
too
bad
proud.
man.
He didn't want to be like a dog begging for scraps off of the Starfleet plate.
You know what he should do? He should stalk off, wait till Mayweather stalks off, and then just kind of sneak back around the corner.
Or he can kidnap their chef like he kidnapped the Nausicaan.
I don't have much more to say on this episode, Fatheree, but just looking at my my own notes, there was like one little thing that I wanted to mention Mayweather's anecdote about how the slower warp ships that he grew up on, basically there's not a lot of, or there is lots of time, so there's lots of sex.
Lots of babies.
Lots of babies
see kids
born.
running around playing hide and seek on the Fortunate, so that felt realistic.
Yeah, and that's he said, like, that's my origin too. I think they have some neat little bits of lore built into his stories, even if it maybe sounds a little scripty at times.
Well, are you ready to move on to the next episode?
Let's do it.
Front. Okay, so this one written by Stephen Beck and Tim Finch and directed by Tom Paris, Robert Duncan McNeil.
Oh.
Archer is confronted by a member of his crew who claims to be from 900 years in the future and is there to capture a Suliban operative who has boarded Enterprise. So this is our introduction to Daniels, crewman Daniels, or future time cop Daniels, or whatever you want to call him, whatever he is. But yeah, we get like another temporal time Cold War, temporal Cold War episode, timey-wimey stuff going on here.
Is this kind of the first big one since the premiere?
Yeah. And kind of the only one they do that's not a like season premiere or season finale. It's normally a thing that they reserve for those going forward. But I always look forward to this one when rewatching, and I especially liked it like this last rewatch. I think just kind of trying to watch it more critically and more analytically, I found so much to love in this. And just, I might have mentioned this some in weeks previously, but Brannon Braga going into Enterprise had the idea for a temporal Cold War TV show. And I think that could have been just like a modern day TV show, you know, it would have been like during like the time of like 24 and Lost and Battlestar Galactica, but like you're basically like during this time of Enterprise. I think people would have been like really open to that, you know, kind of.
Fatheree, a Trek show or like a general science fiction
just like
show?
a general science fiction show.
Yeah.
But, you know, that ended up becoming like the main kind of the future element that UPN wanted in Enterprise. They didn't really want a prequel. They wanted something that would be like more futuristic than previous Trek. So they had asked Rick Berman if he would do something, you know, kind of make it more of a sequel type thing, and then Brannon had this idea for temporal Cold War. But you really see like, oh, you can do like cool Cold War type spy thriller espionage stories with a timey-wimey twist. And I thought that was so cool. Like it's a classic spy thriller idea of like these undercover spies that kind of like through their actions they're trying to like bait the other one. Like they're baiting each other. We have like Silic and Daniels doing that, and they're both like undercover on Enterprise. They both reveal themselves to Archer, and he kind of doesn't know who to trust. We as the audience kind of don't know who to trust. We do learn more about Daniels later. I guess we get more about his faction than Silic's. But just within the context of this episode, just kind of having that little bit of mindfuckery, like, for all we know, I mean, maybe Silic. I mean, this is Star Trek. You know, sometimes the bad guy turns out to not be that bad. You know, so.
What's the guy's name? Daniels.
Yeah.
He opens up almost with a gift. Like, he gives him this cool technology, and like he offers up some answers, like at least some basic starter answers. But then, like, he himself admits that who is it? Is it Silic? Is that what the name? Yeah, Silic.
The Suliban is Silic.
Yeah, that he saved the ship, and then it starts to get muddy and confusing. Like, wait, why did he save it?
Yeah.
And why do we want to hurt the guy who saved the ship? Yeah, Fatheree, I liked it for the same reasons you did. I liked that they were kind of both hitting Archer with so much propaganda he didn't know what end was up.
And we meet those other people, the Pilgrims. You know, they were kind of cool. I like seeing Archer as kind of like the curious explorer, and you know, he kind of meets like these. They're kind of weirdos, like that ship captain Fraddick. I loved him, by the way.
He's good. He's grumpy, like grouchy, but not like cruel.
Yeah, he's fine. Yeah, he's a grumpy introvert Lyft driver, and he's this is his job. He's at work. He doesn't want to like socialize and chit chat. You know.
Cake is Eternal asks if my background is the super tricorder, and it is. I wanted to go ahead and put some temporal Cold War data up there so y'all can analyze it in your downtime and see if we can figure out what's going on.
Oh, nice. The super tricorder.
Yeah. But yeah, you know what I liked? I felt like the Pilgrim guys were treated with respect. It was nice to see some guys who weren't like a cult. They seemed like pretty chill dudes, and
yeah, they're kind of weird, but they're not like harassing. They're not like you know, trying to like stop women from getting abortions like the religious freaks here in Texas. So.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know what they're doing in their downtime, but this was them at their mecca, and they were. You know, they what is it, Trip, who kind of underestimates them, and he's like, this is a warp engine, it makes things go, and, you know, the guy's like, oh, I'm a warp theorist, or something like that.
But that's Trip's thing, is he's got to remember that Vulcan lesson, you know, challenge your preconceptions, or they'll challenge you, you know, so he had to get a little reminder there. The Pilgrim dudes, though, like I like watching this episode and trying to be like, which one of them is Silic? Like, you know, staring at all their faces, like watching what they're doing and stuff. That's always fun. And when Daniels like pulls out what Cake is Eternal in the comments a second ago called the super tricorder, and like shows Archer like all the cool future stuff. That's all. I don't know. For some reason, just like the fact that there's cool gadgets like that in Daniels' quarters, that was always a neat idea of like, oh, they can like that end shot when they lock up.
Oh, I love that. I actually don't know if they really go back to that much. I guess maybe don't tell me. I wasn't, you know, like, but they made it seem like, oh, well, you know, what else is in his quarters? And I was like, oh, that'd be cool if every once in a while there's some new discovery or they figure out something about something in there. If maybe they never go back to it, I guess I don't mind if you say that. But I thought it was a dope ending because it has such a promise to it as they showed that like lot going on it. It also reminded me a little bit of the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark when they, you know, close up the big warehouse with all the hidden stuff.
But where Daniels is from, the 31st century, just to keep it in perspective of the Star Trek timeline, that's earlier than Discovery in the 32nd century. So when he has like this little gadget that like, oh, you just put this on your hand and you can like walk through walls and stuff like that.
Very cool.
That's why I think like technology in Discovery, it's hard to do, but they've done like a pretty good job of like showing like the technology level like being up on like on that high of level. I think it took like a few steps back after the burn and stuff, but for the most part, the technology on Disco actually seems like, oh yeah, this is post like year 3000 type stuff.
Right, it felt like it's a little bit magical, you know, even within Trek confines or within their futurism. It feels a little bit magical. You know, Archer walking through walls, beaming anywhere, like just in and around a ship in Discovery, that kind of stuff.
The scene of Silic confronting Archer in his quarters, I like that, but it does remind me, like, oh, they took this from Deep Space Nine. You know, I don't know if you remember, but when Gul Dukat is in Sisko's quarters in one of their early interactions, and the first thing Sisko does is he calls Ops, and he asks, where's the location of Jake Sisko? And Gul Dukat is all offended. He's like, Benjamin, you think I would lay a hand on your son? You think I would ever hurt a child? How dare you think this of me? But it's kind of similar here, where Silik is like calling Archer Jonathan, and you got to think like, oh, Silik knows this guy is like some big famous dude. So it would be like us if we walked up to George Washington before he's like the first president, when he's just like some officer in the British Army. You know, he's not even a general yet. And
right.
He's like, hey, George, come here, I gotta tell you something, you know?
Right. There's an implication of importance in there. You know, by the way, I felt a little bad for Silik in the beginning when he's talking to the shadowy figure. And he's gonna like...
his augmentations removed.
Yeah, they're taking some out, and I was like, they wanted him to like start this whole like, you know, civil war or internal dissent among the Klingon Empire. I'm like, that's one dude, man. That's the big job. You know, so, that was a lot of to put on him.
We should talk about this since Brandon Braga says that it's true, but Brandon Braga claims that Future Guy would have been revealed to be Archer had the show had enough seasons that they would come. I don't know if that's true, because if you watch like the season 4 DVD commentary that came out in 2005, it was recorded while they were producing season 4, and they talk about it in there. They're like, yeah, this will probably be the last temporal Cold War story if we do a season 5. I don't know if we're gonna have any temporal Cold War in there. So it kind of made it sound like they had kind of just washed their hands of it, or at least like Manny Kodo had. But if this was Archer, like, it kind of does make sense he would want Silik to stop the ship from exploding, and maybe there are reasons why you would want, like, the Klingon Empire like destabilized so that they're not like a threat to Earth or something. Like, you can still kind of see how, like, maybe they were thinking it would turn out that this was Archer all along, but who knows if that was really the plan, or if but I don't know. Maybe we could still like retcon that in there. Maybe that story will still be told someday.
Yeah, we can look at some of these things and see if we can figure out reasons why an Archer would do that in the future. Father, I was looking at my notes and I see I made note of Daniels's his kind of wry mysteriousness. So when he's answering some questions, Archer's like, you're human? And he's like, mostly. And then he says at some point, or I think this is Trip talking to him later, he says, well, it's good to know Earth will still be around in 900 years. And he's like, well, that depends on how you define Earth. I liked him being enigmatic like that. And almost like the Doctor sometimes when he's being kind of frustratingly obtuse.
I don't know what he meant by that, because, we do see Earth in the 31st and 32nd century, and it's still there, but I wonder.
Well, that's what they've done, but at the time, maybe he meant that it's like, oh, it was destroyed and then rebuilt, or it's been so heavily
spoiler alert, in a few episodes we'll see 31st century Earth, so it's
yeah, I'm sure the dialogue was just given to him to sound mysterious, the idea being that, oh, with our crazy technology, maybe it's been joined with the moon, maybe it's been merged with another planet.
Like, I don't know, like, I wonder, maybe it was destroyed and they had to like buy another one and from a Ferengi and tractor it to our solar system, and we have like a new Earth.
Yeah, that would be
same continents or something.
That'd be kind of cool if it was something that out there. But yeah, for as far as like just what I could see of it, I just liked it because it was like mysterious and made him seem like this guy who, oh man, this guy knows stuff.
And we see the super tricorder tech again in Discovery, and in Strange New Worlds, and my favorite Strange New Worlds episode, Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow.
Oh, was it the same kind of visual?
When La'an uses it to time travel to the 21st century.
Oh, very cool.
But and that's the thing. That's the thing that Silik was after. He wanted, because that's a cool thing to have. If you have this pad that has all this information, all these future historical events, obviously you'd want to get your hands on that. And so I like the idea of Silik's faction. They can manifest in the past in the 22nd century, but not like fully. They're just sending like the little garbled image back.
Right, we found out Daniels is from 900 years, but Silik is from before that.
Right. So Daniels seems to be like fully manifested, but when Silik shoots him, it kind of looks like a hologram exploding.
Right.
They don't really explain that that's what it is, but Daniels does show up in future episodes, so we can
Cool.
we can conclude it is kind of a some type of projection technology. So it's just like a more advanced form of whatever future guy is using, right?
Right.
So if it was going to be Archer sending his image back in time, that still kind of makes sense. You know, we know that he's from somewhere before the 31st century. Well, you know, anything in Archer's lifetime is going to be before the 31st century, so that would line up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I can't theorize on it too much until I see actually like how it does play out. I can't guess too much about what they might have intended.
The decompression scene when they have that fight, that's neat, but it's always kind of awkward to me. I'm like, is he Archer just like walking around in a vacuum right now? Like,
yeah.
But I guess there's like a vacuum, but there's still gravity. It always seems like kind of awkward to. I don't know what would actually happen with the Star Trek technology if you did open up those hangar bay doors like that, and how easy would it be to, like, you know, walk around on the catwalk and get yourself back inside to where there's air or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe it would look like that. It always comes off as like kind of awkward looking, but.
Yeah, it seemed like they might not have been like completely consistent exactly, but
it's still
not,
cool.
I get the idea.
I like Silic, how Silic can like just jump off into space, and you have like that cool looking nebula that the Pilgrims are visiting, and just like the you know, the cool just like espionage thing of like destroying the spy gadget. So it's all fun in the end, and I have a great time with this episode. Let's move on to Silent Enemy, written by Andre Romanis, who was the science consultant on Star Trek and a lot of Berman-era Star Trek, and wrote some episodes on Voyager and Enterprise. It was directed by Winrick Colby. Enterprise is attacked by an unknown alien starship as Archer orders the crew to install experimental phase cannons. Meanwhile, Sato is ordered to find out what Reed's favorite food is for a birthday dinner. So we have kind of a serious A-plot about we gotta get our guns working before these aliens kill us. And also, Hoshi, by the way, figure out what Reed wants to eat on his birthday. So two urgent, pressing
It
matters.
is a little odd to have something that light, which, by the way, just as a quick aside, I really, because I couldn't quite remember this episode, I was like, oh, those have to be Romulans. This is one of those things where they're cheating in some kind of Romulan probe.
Oh my god.
And it's green and it looks like Romulan.
Oh my god. You had the same thought as 2001 Fatheree, a high school kid watching this 23 years ago. Because
I mean, like, I know they cheated. Like, you know, we're just a few episodes from, or not a few, but from Ferengi showing up, kind of a little cheat of an early meeting with them and stuff.
I'm still disappointed that it's not Romulans. I still feel the heartbreak when I see these CGI weirdos walking around on the ship. I said out loud, I was in like the room with my little rat terrier, KK, in my lap probably, watching this episode, and I said out loud, like, that ain't no Romulan. Like, I was like disappointed. I was like, but beyond your Romulan suspicions, what else did you think about this one?
You know, I actually, this was one of the episodes where it really kind of connected with me that they're starting to show that sort of organic continuity, because they actually released the subspace amplifier, I think.
Yeah, the episode opens with them dropping their second one.
Yep.
And then these assholes, you start blowing them up, which is cool because it's like, oh, you're cut off from communication. You're like Voyager. You're all alone. You're all on your own. What are you gonna do?
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. That's really frustrating to, like, you just set it up and these dudes blow it up. And these guys are almost just like, they're like trolls. They're assholes. They're, you know, first they just show up, they scan them, they pound them a little bit and then just fly off. But then it like gets more and more serious to the point where they're invading, they're like zapping people inside the ship. They're kind of like gray aliens.
Hanging up spy devices, yeah.
Yeah, like taunting him almost. And I have to admit, I kind of appreciated, this is one of those kind of, the two-fisted side of Enterprise. I like that they were like, you know, we're going to go home and we're going to arm up, because this was another neat bit of continuity. They're just like, we keep getting outmatched, and and Archer's like, I'm getting pissed about it. And they're like, you know what, we don't got to go back for it. We can do double time on this, and they do it, and they bloody the aliens' noses, metaphorically speaking. Maybe physically or literally too. I don't know. I didn't see their shit, but I thought it was a pretty kind of cool suspense episode that didn't quite pay off as much as I might have liked, and I also the Reed subplot, I think is had good stuff in it. Seeing his sort of neglectful parents, I think, was like a good insight into his character. That they don't even know what his job is. He just always ate what we put in front of him. He's very dutiful.
I feel like this would be like if someone tried to call my dad or my sisters and like ask them like anything about me. They'd be. I'm curious. We should do this as an experiment. I think people in the Tex-Trek audience. I'm looking at like the folks commenting now. That are watching live, like I think y'all would know me better than my dad and sisters probably with like a lot of stuff. Like
that's kind of rough. I'm sorry to hear, Fatheree. But what I wanted, I wish that almost like Troy or somebody had been in this episode to say, "Oh, that's really terrible," and let's talk about that. But instead, Hoshi's like, I guess I'll ask somebody else what his favorite food is." I'm like, well, you just learned something really pretty serious about this dude. And I don't blame, of course, the actress, and I really don't put it on the character. It's a writing slip. They could have leaned more into that.
The scene where Reed thinks Hoshi is hitting on him, Linda
like
Park is really good in that. She's great in that.
It's a scene that made me laugh out loud. I've found more funny scenes in this than I expected to.
Linda Park's good at comedy. They should have gave her more comedy.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. I think because they are sometimes a little reticent to do it. But yeah, she handled it well, and even the way that scene was filmed, it was good.
So, I have. This episode I always struggle with. I forgive it for like not being Romulans, even though I think that would have been like so much cooler. But I was hoping, like, going into this episode, like reading the synopsis and watching the little promo they put out a week ahead of time, and it's kind of like today when they put like a little promo images out a few days before the episode comes out. It was like that, and when I'm watching it and I see like the green ship, but I was kind of hoping that it would just be like some Romulans running around with like helmets on. No one gets like a good look at their ears,
right.
Like you were saying, Dave. There's ways to cheat and still have it make sense in the original series when they say no one has ever seen a Romulan. But okay, they didn't do that. They wanted to do like the story of like, oh look, there's some ship that they come across, and Archer is all excited to make first contact, and he's about to, except it's like these really scary, very mysterious aliens that are they're just going to attack, and there's no way to kind of communicate or negotiate with them. So we're gonna have to figure out how to hook up our weapons. We left space dock before we had these weapons set up, and okay, we got it, and now we can fight these guys and win the day. And I saw that in the episode Fight or Flight. That was the first episode after Broken Bow, when they figured out how to get their torpedoes to work to fight the people that wanted to make space Viagra out of the human lymph nodes.
Yes.
So it's only in season 1, and we're like repeating a basic entire plot beat for beat on episode what is this, like 12? Silent Enemy, but whatever it is, it's like we haven't even gotten out of season 1, and I do think Silent Enemy is a better episode than Fight or Flight, but it just disappoints me to see them do the exact same thing again.
I think I was dazzled by like I love the supercharged phasers. They just looked cool as hell.
That was cool, yeah. I guess phase cannons are different from phasers. You have
plasma
cannons. Yeah, plasma cannons are like the weakest. And then you have phase cannons that are like a little bit better, and then phasers that are even better than that. They're all just like a beam coming out of something.
And Charizard,
that's the hierarchy.
Charizard is at the top of it, I think.
Yeah, that's what they evolve into. That's the best one.
But yeah, and shuttle pods will eventually become shuttles.
And then runabouts.
Yeah. I thought like on the sort of suspense level, creepy aliens. I like the kind of spooky aliens, and I noticed it felt like the music I've been noticing has been more effective than I thought it would be. I'm kind of used to that bland TNG music sometimes, and I felt like they were kind of up in their game in some of these episodes, where the eerie stuff in this was pretty eerie, and made the aliens seem that much creepier. So, I was into it, even if, it didn't quite have the, like you said, it's a repetitive plot, and it is a little weird to juxtapose this, we could be destroyed by these aliens, with what's Travis's favorite, Reed's favorite food. I was glad that they got it. They at least figured it out. Jill was, noting that it seems like the writers don't want us to like Reed, and I think they wanted to have a character who's hard to get to know.
I feel like they want us to like Reed too much. I feel like Enterprise gives Reed too much spotlight and too much attention. I'm like, I would much rather see Hoshi or Travis. I think that they're much more interesting people. Like the show just seems like so obsessed with Trip and Reed, and they're just constant. I think those were the characters that Brannon Braga and Rick Berman most liked, and so those are the ones that they were trying to push in everyone's face, and I think it hurt. I think it hurt the show, but please continue.
Yeah, no, I don't know that I had much more than that. I'm just quick skimming my notes to see if there was anything else I was gonna mention.
We got Natalie from Pensacola mentioned she didn't want a long distance relationship, so.
Oh, you know what? I really liked that. That was I thought a well scripted scene where Trip. What is it like? What's the context of that? Oh, it's because of the subspace amplifier.
Yeah, I got a message saying that they're done.
Right, but like where other people were kind of getting these good bits and pieces. You know what I liked about the way that scene was scripted? Trip didn't bring it up first thing. It's one of those things where he wanted the buffer of a bit of normal conversation, and then he tells Archer, and he's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, this happened," and that's kind of one of those, like a little bit of a guy thing, or just a suppress your feelings kind of thing. And also that you don't necessarily want to hit something personal when you're just starting to talk to somebody. You need to ease into it a little bit too. So I don't know, I just thought that was a neat little bit of scripting for a very short scene, and I felt bad for Trip.
I like that they get to drink beer with the pineapple cake at the end. I picture it's a really like light beer, like Michelob Ultra, like a very like summer beer, with like a pineapple cake. But if that's all we got on Silent Enemy, let's move on to Dear Doctor, written by Maria Yakimetin and Andre Yakimetin. Directed by James A. Conter, Enterprise assists a culture that has been stricken by a planet-wide plague. Dave, I think of all the season 1 episodes we get of Star Trek Enterprise, this is the best example of a classic Star Trek moral quandary type story. Yeah. I know that's a particular favorite subgenre for you in the franchise. What do you think of this one?
My favorite episode of the season so far, along with maybe the Andorian incident, to the point where I've occasionally been like, I've got some friends who know I'm doing this rewatch, and I've occasionally been saying, oh, let me tell you about the little moral quandary in this episode and ask you what you think about it. It's the kind of quandary that could have shown up in any of these series in a way, but I thought was well handled in this one, and I liked the details of it. It's easy to see bits and pieces that are relevant to us. You can see elements of Native American reservations in America in the story, and they use the analogy that this planet has like two sort of humanoid species, and they say, oh, it'd be like if Neanderthals hadn't died out, and we had both modern humans and Neanderthals running around. And like, oh, that's again something we could relate to. Is like, had that happened, and the Neanderthals were kind of second-class citizens, would it be cool if they were immune to this thing, to help out the humans? I think it's a really cool plot and well handled. Good, because Dr. Phlox is a good entry point for that. Kind of unusual too, because he's not like this just overblown with empathy. In fact, he's like, oh, these humans are so empathetic. They're sure give you the shirt off their back. But he's like, at first he kind of is a little aloof about it, as he often seems to be, and like some of the stuff doesn't seem to make a big impression on him.
Well, I'm going to key off of that a little bit and talk about Dr. Phlox. I do consider him the best character on Star Trek Enterprise. And I love getting, a Phlox-centric episode here. I love the framing device of his letters to Dr. Lucas kind of being used as kind of like the log entry. I know Archer has log entries in this episode also, but just having that as kind of Phlox's narration was a cool way to get in his head. Because, yeah, he's telling Dr. Lucas things he wouldn't really talk to anyone on the ship about. So they gave him a BFF to open up to. You mentioned that, this is kind of a moral quandary story they could have done in any Star Trek show, but I want to critique that just a little bit and say that this is actually unique to Enterprise because it's something that you would only do pre-Prime Directive. It's most Star Trek shows, they'd be like, oh, we're not even going to talk, we're not going to interact with these people at all, we'll take this guy back to his homeworld and then like erase his mind so we don't contaminate his culture. I know it's like a little different if kind of like that culture is kind of like already dealing with warp-capable people. They do mention the Ferengi in this episode, by the way, so a little foreshadowing.
I really like the bit where, T'Pol says, hey, even for the Vulcans who, there's clearly a a version of the Prime Directive in this. She's like, even we would allow some leeway on this. These guys have interacted with warp-capable species. They're seeking them. So, yeah, that was a neat entry point that was kind of unusual.
The actual, like, moral quandary for, people don't remember, but the idea of, like, these a dominant species on a planet that's kind of like the equivalent of, real-life 21st century Earth as far as, like, development. But they're being wiped out by a plague, and it turns out, it's actually genetic, and they're all gonna die. And but this other species, this kind of subspecies, the mink, they're not compatible, but they're kind of treated as like kind of like these primitive servants, but they're going to evolve into the dominant species. If the Valakians die out, the dominant species, the Valakians die out, that would, I guess, like kind of clear a lane for the mink to inherit the planet.
The Ming shall inherit the Earth.
What would you do, Dave? Would you cure the Valakians, or would you let them fend for themselves and let evolution decide who?
This is a pretty serious question. That'd be a fun class if they ever did this, and probably having college courses like the philosophy, the morality of Star Trek. And not just like the Prime Directive and stuff like that, but that this is related to it. But just take these specific things and have the class play it out like they would a trolley problem, like in a philosophy class. Archer at first is like upset that Phlox was considering holding back the information that he's got to cure. He's like, we have something, we can help them. How can you possibly, not help? But yes, everything's more complicated. It's like, it is clear they treat the other, species as second-class citizens, that they're kind of controlling and manipulative about them, not overtly. They make it blurry enough that they're not overtly cruel to them, and they give them basic needs, but are like kind of keeping them back. There's just no other way to put it. I think they maybe made the right decision, but it's wild to imagine. Because they also do, there's a little bit of we can give you this stuff that helps you treat the disease. And if somebody's got it, it'll like add 10 years onto their life. And so that's pretty notable. That is not nothing. But they straight up just, like, if that guy were to say, do you have a cure? I don't know if he ever put it that way, the head, the president
of... doctor?
Yeah. Did they actually ever just straight lie to him and say
no?
Nope.
But I mean, like those guys, like they ask for warp drive. They ask, like, they're like, oh well, if you can't give us a cure, like what can you give us? And so I think they knew they were being like withheld from. But that's interesting, Dave. I would have made the opposite choice. I would have been fully transparent. I would have showed them your genes are fucked. You're all going to go extinct. I can fix it for you. But I'm concerned about this other species on your planet. So in order for me to cure you, you're going to have to, you're going to have to like learn to coexist with them. So
you're offering the conditional response. Yes. I like that as an idea. I don't know if it's in this episode or
I feel like that would be the response. If I was playing Star Trek Resurgence, that would be the answer I would want to select on the game menu, but it wouldn't be there. So I would just pick whatever to give it to the, because I wouldn't like look at like a Valakian family and be like, oh, that sick child in the hospital bed, like I can cure that kid, but I'm not going to because of some hypothetical people that might exist in a few thousand years. You know, to me, like that's kind of like telling like a pregnant mother, like, oh, you're gonna have to like, you know, carry this pregnancy, even though it's going to doom you, but because of like this hypothetical person that might be born.
So Star Trek will fairly often simplify things into sort of binary choice. Even a complex issue will sometimes get put that way because it's just more dramatic. Like that's the simple reason that they did it, and like sometimes easier to explain.
Yeah.
You don't. The TNG way might be a little bit more to debate it at in a ready room, but. One of the things I really liked in this episode was when Archer confesses to Paul. He's like, I'm starting to have a little bit of sympathy for how the Vulcans were and how
I never thought I'd say this, but I'm beginning to understand how the Vulcans felt.
Yep. Because here's the thing, Fatheree. Had they done what you're talking about, well, then I think it's like, well, then Archer, you can't just say that and then fly off into space. You have to enforce it then, and you have to make sure it's going through. So you have to begin extended diplomatic talks between Starfleet and
I don't think they should have wrote that. I'm just saying that was just in our thought experiment. That would be my personal.
Sure.
But
that's why I think
that's what they should have done in the episode. I don't think that's what, like, the TV writers should not have written that.
But I think that's kind of how Archer at least had some notion of that, like, well, we can have these sort of long interaction that where we just start and we probably begin decades of negotiation and back and forthing in there, which I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind seeing Trek do some things like that. We have second contact teams.
That was Deep Space Nine. That was kind of the story of that show.
And Lower Decks has the second contact teams that would be setting up the follow through on that. But yeah, I really like this. I do like I like an episode sometimes, even if there's the binary decision is one that's a little difficult or very difficult, and you might have some struggle with it. Tuvix, famous example. Mm-hmm. And I really like that episode too.
This is the Tuvix of Enterprise.
It is. I thought Archer was just going to straight do it. So when he tells Phlox, he's like, "Oh, I've been turning this over in my head all night," and he's like, "I am reluctantly going to do what you said."
I kind of wish that they had gone with the original ending that the writers intended for this.
I did read about this.
I don't know if you know about this.
I read about it, so go ahead. But go ahead and say it.
They wanted Phlox to discover the cure and then withhold it from Archer, and I kind of liked that more because it's more dramatic. And if they were doing this today, this is what like the network would want. The way that TV is written now, people want like the big shocking moments. They want the drama. They want like the next like red wedding event that everyone will be talking about, like this big episode. But back then in 2001, or we might be in 2002 by this point, they want shows that are a product. It's a brand. You see Star Trek Enterprise on the cover of TV Guide, and you know what that show is about. And so they thought it was important in order to, I guess, to maintain whatever brand or image they wanted of the show. They're like, our captain can't be some dum-dum. They're like, he doesn't even know if the doctor has a cure or not. He's got to be like the guy in charge making all the choices, and the buck stops with him. And they wanted more kind of like that strong man in control type image for Archer. So they had them change it. But I like that idea because Phlox is a Denobulan, and they might have like a different morality, and he's not in Starfleet, and he can he might make different choices, but I don't know. I kind of think Archer's kind of too. I think he's kind of too cruel to the Valakians in the end, but I feel sorry for him. I wish he hadn't been burdened with this choice.
Fatheree, if you if it helps you, think of the Valakians as Americans, and realize that. Archer maybe was treating him like they needed to be treated.
I don't want American people to suffer either. I don't want any civilian population to suffer.
No, I get it. I have a few odds and ends things I wanted to mention that because there's actually a lot. You mentioned his denobulan possible morality, and I wanted to bring it up because I really like the subplot of him connecting with Hoshi over his language.
Oh yeah, that was fun when they have some denobulan language scenes.
Yeah, and he's it's a little gentle chiding, and but they get close, and then what is it? I liked to Paul being somewhat forced the way dentists always ask you dumb questions, but to when Phlox is messing with her teeth, and he's like, "Oh, what is this thing called romance? How do you go about that?" And like, should I return Ensign Cutler, Crewman Cutler?
Crewman Cutler, yeah.
Should I return her advances or not? I liked her character too. There was just lots and lots of stuff in this episode to like.
Yeah, I like the little flirtation with Phlox, and we see more of her. She shows up one more time. I think she's only in 3 episodes total.
That's too bad. I'd like her as a recurring supporting character.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the actress passed away pretty young, like while Enterprise was still on the air.
That's brutal.
So
that's brutal.
I think like during like season 4, but they kind of like stopped using her before then. Anyways, I don't know if she ever would have shown up again, but she was they mention her in like season 3, so she's still on Enterprise.
Okay, they had some really good interactions, like
a
few where she calls out Phlox's sort of like his indifference. She's like, "Oh, you don't care about that?" And he's like, "Should I?" In that very Phloxian way. And then he also it brought out it casually brought out that he's has a polyamorous marriage.
Technically, it'd be polygamous.
Oh, polygamous, yeah. What is it? 3 wives and 2 husbands, I think.
3 wives, and each wife has 3 husbands. They have him and then 2 others.
That's a pretty intense relationship. But yes, it's. It feels progressive for the early 2000s to even be speaking about that, even though it's done through an alien, not like a human, which would be a little more shocking, I'm sure, to the audience. But, yeah, just one of the many little details in the episode that I thought, oh, that's neat, oh, that's cool. Fatheree, do you ever find that Phlox seems too detached? That he wasn't worried, like early on, wasn't he himself not that worried about the interaction between the 2 species on him? Did Cutler push him to suddenly make that judgment?
She was the one who was like, who was like, well, that's really weird, and he was like, well, it's their culture.
Right, but then by the end of the episode, he is straight up. He was like maybe not going to tell the captain because he felt that I guess what he discovered. And somewhere between Cutler's words to him, criticizing him, and his discovery that the sort of oppressed species was going to become ascendant, he, I guess, got a viewpoint on it, which he didn't really have before.
Yeah. But I don't know. I enjoy Phlox, and I like that he's not Starfleet because he could. It's like the lesson of Deep Space Nine. It's like, oh yeah, Quark can do all kinds of messed up stuff because he's or Kira or who like a bunch of people, Odo, like a lot of people on that show are not Starfleet. So if I was ever making a Star Trek show, I would want to have non-Starfleet people on the ship or stationed there also.
For sure. It always lets the rules get bent.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't have anything else on Dear Doctor.
Father, I was going to mention just one real quick thing about that one, which is that Hoshi does a fair amount of translating and stuff in it. And I find that even though, I know the reason that the Universal Translator exists as a plot device is it just translating in general would be kind of boring and doesn't really add to a scene. But I think they, at least in this first season, I'm sure they start doing it less. But I think they do a pretty good job where anytime she is translating, there's something that she's revealing about the aliens or someone's motivations or something like that when she's doing it. And so, I just, I compliment the writers on giving a good, some cool stuff for a linguist to do.
Well, let's move on to Sleeping Dogs, written by Fred Decker, directed by Les Landau. Well, Exploring a gas giant, Enterprise finds the wreck of a Klingon scout vessel sinking into the atmosphere. So this is our, I guess, we saw the Klingons a little bit at Unexpected, but this is the first kind of like true Klingon episode since Broken Bow. And I guess kind of like the first true like Klingon-centric, Enterprise episode, kind of exploring these space Viking Klingons of the 22nd century. But it's not... It's another, like, I like it, I don't love it. There's nothing too remarkable in this episode, other than, I guess, it's kind of being the first Enterprise Klingon episode, but it's another one I look forward to. I like seeing the Raptor-class scout ship. It's, a lot more than, like, the weird-ass Katinga that doesn't make sense for the 22nd century. I like the siren calls, when Travis is like, oh yeah, these used to scare me as a kid. Whenever we'd pass by a gas giant, my dad would play these on the speakers. Do cool space boomer stuff. Like we were saying, like they should do more of like Travis has like all these kind of cool like experiences that he gets to share with everyone else like that. And I like, I guess Archer kind of, he learns to be a little bit more of a Starfleet captain and gets like a little bit of a better handle on that diplomacy with Klingons. Sometimes you gotta be tough back to them, and and he's like I'll blast you back down there to where I found you. And that Klingon captain, by the way, played by Von Armstrong, so he got to like talk shit to his boss basically. It's Admiral Forrest as a Klingon.
Oh right. Oh, that's wild. It occurred to me that when Archer, I do like a take charge kind of captain, that there's a little bit of both Picard and Kirk in him. The Picard in the sense that he did his homework and studied the Klingon from the Vulcan database. And then Kirk because, he's doing some bluffing. He's pushing buttons based on Klingon psychology. And so I thought that was a neat little touch. I agree with you that this episode is, a little bit of a little bit lesser one. Still solid, suspenseful outing.
Solid. There's nothing bad in it, in my opinion.
A
bit of that blandness, a bit Enterprise Season 1 blandness.
I'd agree with that. I think the descending thing. I read that this was based on at least inspired by an incident with a sunken Russian sub. I think did it have a completely tragic ending? Like, did all the sailors die of lack of air in it?
Yeah, I think it was like in the late 90s, but yeah, like they wouldn't let anyone, they wouldn't let any other ships
assist.
Yeah.
And so they imagined, what could they do in Trek's time? What could a crew like that maybe accomplish?
This is my first time watching this after Star Trek Discovery, so it's kind of cool to just what we learn about the Klingons in Discovery kind of factor that in. But we see them as like those raiding parties, like Michael Burnham content warning for, watch out, but when Michael Burnham describes, like being like hiding in a cabinet and like listening to someone being assaulted. We thought it was her mom, but turns out like her mom was the Red Angel in the time suit. So spoilers for Discovery. Sorry, but those Klingon raiders are pretty bad though. Like those those raiding parties. So I kind of side with T'Pol a little bit when she's like, these dudes will want to die. Let's just like let them die in this gas giant. It's like, oh yeah, like let's not like have these people just like going around just pillaging the spaceways.
In the first in Broken Bow, that's what the Vulcans wanted to do. Then too, they're
pull the plug on them.
Yeah, they're pretty quick to take that choice. It's kind of the antithesis of usual Trek philosophy, which is, you always try and make friends with your enemies. You always try and help somebody who's dying.
Yeah, no,
and you sometimes will do things that they don't want to do because you know better than them. Which is why, even though it was a kind of sucky episode, I did appreciate that, like, T'Pol made sure that Archer knew you cannot relocate these people in the caves against their will. That they were at least starting to consider that.
Oh, in Terra Nova. You're talking about in Terra Nova.
Terra Nova, yeah. An aspect of a mediocre episode.
I thought you liked Terra Nova. I thought we liked that one.
I liked it, I think, more than most people. But
I like it more than most people, so I thought it was kind of cool that we agreed. But
yeah, and that in my case, particularly because it's a clear-cut win, and the crew had been struggling so much, which is why I'm glad that they got their phase cannons up and rolling in this one, and
It is fun to see Archer is like he's more both confident and competent at the end when he's able to stand his ground and talk talk tough to the Klingon, but he's able to like back it up when he's like, I will blast you back down there where I found you. And the stuff with Reed and Hoshi and T'Pol being the away team that goes on. I thought that was like a cool pairing because they don't really have a lot of like friendship chemistry, but they just seeing them like work together, it's like, oh, they really do feel like a crew, and T'Pol feels like she's gelled and become part of the crew, and she's even kind of like joking around a bit, but still doing it in a very Vulcan way when she's like, perhaps we should leave our helmets on at the bad smell when they get on the ship, or then at the end, she plays along when they want to stay in the sonic shower in the decon chamber when she tells Phlox like, maybe you should run those tests again, we want to be sure. So, and of course we have to hit our Enterprise sexy moment quota. So
what I liked about
in their underwear.
What I liked about this one was that it was almost like being a little meta, like it was acknowledging that it's a little hokey and kind of goofy by saying, oh, and you know what else? It's they like it. It's actually comfortable. It's like a spa, sauna kind of thing. And they might get the Vulcan to lie for them so that they can stay in it longer. I kind of I got a laugh out of that one. But yeah, they had to when they're over on the Klingon ship, they have to do a lot of work. There's exploration, there's translation involved. They've got to figure out how to make Klingon systems work. And
T'Pol and Hoshi do have that bonding moment of like the when she helps her cancel out some of her emotions that were. It's really good.
It things like that. When I get to a scene like that, it makes me like an episode better than maybe some of the staging in it was.
I don't have anything else, but let me ask you, what do you think of our Klingon officer, Buka, or whatever her name was? What do you think of her?
I don't have like a strong opinion, but I think there was something felt slightly off to me, and I can't quite put my finger on what it was. But I didn't feel like she made a real strong impression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's just kind of generic seeming.
Yeah, it was the
They showed her some Duras sister episodes and said, just do this. And they didn't really they didn't give her like anything, additional material wise. So, nothing on the actor, but that's all I got though on Sleeping Dogs.
Let me see. There's, this had a bit in it that also made me laugh and I wanted to mention it. It's when Archer's just about to talk to her, and Trip says he kind of gives his little cheeky support where he's like, hey, just remember, Captain, if they sense weakness, they might kill you and replace you. And he gives him like a little fist pump, like just looking out for you, buddy. That I thought was very expertly delivered by Connor Trenier, and made me laugh.
Well, we get some Captain Trip, so that's kind of fun. We get more Or no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the next episode, Shadows of Pajum, where he's in command.
He gets riled up when he's in command. Yeah. I'm actually a little anxious when he's in command. I was like, calm down, bro.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about Shadows of Pajum, written by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga. Like, damn it, you can't get away from them. Well, this one's not bad though. Directed by David Livingston. Archer and T'Pol are taken prisoner during an away mission on a war-torn planet in the Corridon system. That's weird. This is on the war-torn planet Corridon. Why say planet in the Corridon system? But Corridon system from Journey to Babel from the original series.
Oh, okay.
And we see these people, the Cordonites. They kind of have like the cracky face, but we see them show up in Star Trek Discovery Season 3. So, I like this episode. Okay, I guess. Yes, it's kind of like okay to me. I love seeing the Andorians again, though, and I love like some of the political stuff going on between like the Vulcans and Corridon.
Yeah, there's like all this.
We could explore more of that.
There's all this proxy stuff going on where it's suggested that we should maybe say a little bit more about the plot in a second, but essentially the sort of ruling class on this planet has Vulcan support, and Archer and T'Pol get kidnapped by sort of the rebel faction, which has Andorian support. So it's clear that there's kind of some proxy war stuff going on. which was as a sudden turn towards sophistication that felt a little out of place in an episode that also has "I'm tied up and I have to put my face in your boobs" scenes.
We should also say that because when they were producing Star Trek Enterprise, they were shooting the episode Civilization on September 11th, 2001, which was the last episode we discussed last week. So this batch of episodes and everything forward in Enterprise was shot after 9/11, and the word terrorism will start to get mentioned a lot in Star Trek Enterprise. You know, it was a hot button topic at the time, and we see a lot of attempts at allegory with that in Enterprise throughout, I guess, all 4 seasons, really. But I do like here, I side with the Vulcans. You know, they're on the side of the downtrodden, as Shran put it. But yeah, we kind of...
Did you say you side with the Vulcans?
I'm sorry, I side with the Andorians.
Okay.
With like when Shran is like, yeah, we're down with, you know, these downtrodden people here, this rebel group, but you know they're kind of crazy. They're never gonna give your people back, so you're gonna need us to.
Yeah, it's funny he says that, and then they go and they like attack him.
Yeah, that is weird. That's where I think like the episode like kind of, some stuff in it I really wish had like a bit more thought, or almost like they had like a bit more time to show things. Like they talk about like these big shipyards of Corridon, but they never show that stuff.
Yeah.
We only see like the little shanty town when Trip's like, I guess not everyone can live in Emerald City. It's like, well, we didn't even see Emerald City, so
right.
But thanks for establishing that. I guess you got to see it. But
they had the dialogue do the heavy lifting in that one. Let's see. I'm trying to remember, why were they going down to the planet in the first place?
The Chancellor Lady, Khalib, invited them. They were just passing by. Archer was passing by, and they were like, "Oh yeah, you can come visit. Look at our shipyards and stuff."
You know what? Is this the one where Archer kind of trolls Trip in the beginning because he knows that like Trip would want to go down there and like take photos.
Him, and he's like, I guess I'll take T'Pol and not you. And then he's finally like, yeah, of course I'll bring you along. You know.
Yeah,
And Trip's the photographer. They set that up, but he loves to take pictures.
Archer deserved his ass whooping for being a little troll.
Well, it's
prankster.
Another round of Scott Bakula wanting Archer to get just the dog shit beat out of him. So he gets beat up by the Cordonite terrorist, then he gets beat up by Jolene Blaylock's massive boobs.
Father, in this and still several episodes to come, they're putting Archer and T'Pol together in these situations again, and you know when the Vulcans show in Fusion, he's the one who's kind of like
he gets jealous.
He gets jealous, and so I was like, well, they were clearly wanting to tease that at this point. It's still kind of where they're headed.
It does feel like in these early seasons, the show could never make up their mind if they wanted to pair T'Pol and Archer or T'Pol and Trip. They do eventually make up their mind with Trip.
Yep.
Slight spoilers.
I knew that.
I'm a fan of that, and I look forward to when we get to those episodes.
It fits that, you know, he was the first person she kind of reached out to a few episodes ago for some advice on her you know, arranged marriage and stuff like that. And
well, because he's the only one who knew about it.
Right, but she, you know, they made that connection.
Yeah, they had that connection kind of forced upon them. But
right, and then I think she was like...
Sometimes that's how sparks form, you know?
And he was extremely, like, he's like, I'm so sorry. He's, you know, he was, like, really apologetic and kind of gentlemanly about it, I felt like. But, Father, I gotta tell you, I was really excited in this just somewhat okay episode when Shran showed up. Because, like, I'm, like, I think I'm gonna always want to see more scenes with him. And I loved that he was. Yeah, I see. In the comments, Joel is like, "Let Shran sleep."
That comes off as like so dopey and like kind of weak dialogue to me. Like it's weird. He's like that neurotic. Like he really like had to like go rescue Archer so he could sleep. Like
I've got to see more Andorian culture because right now all I can do is take it at face value, and so I'm like. Well, if debt and stuff is that important to them, yeah, maybe that is the way it is. Is it not that important later?
It's never. That's the only
Never mentioned
reference I
again.
can think of like like a like an Andorian like an Andorian life debt kind of being a thing. So it seems to be
That's too
unique
bad.
to Shran.
Because I was like, oh yeah, sure. I'm finding out more about the Andorians.
I
Bring it
almost
on.
wish it's like, oh, they had to go to him for help or something like that. Like they had to ask him to like, hey, we did you a big solid, the least you could do. And like I kind of would have preferred that if like Trip has to like go to Shran and talk him into helping.
Yeah.
But that's not what they did, and it kind of concludes too quickly when they're having their big shootout, and then they end up shooting a lot of their Cordonite friends, I guess. That guy who
Hope it's on stun.
the guy who that's fair, yeah. But the guy who tries to shoot Sopek, the Vulcan captain, and then T'Pol, does like the Secret Service slow motion dive, take a bullet for him type thing.
Little cheesy, yeah.
But then Shran just turns around and just unloads on that guy.
He does.
But maybe he was like, no one shoots the Vulcans but me. He's like, no one kills Sopek but me. I've been wanting to assassinate this guy for years. So
Well, we
maybe
see,
that's what it was.
he tells the, he dresses down the Vulcan, and he's like, it should be you that they were carrying off or whatever. And so, I guess he felt moved to protect her because he saw her do an actual heroic kind of thing and didn't think, probably was like, Vulcans don't do that, but maybe she does.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that the opening with kind of the tension between Saval and Admiral Forrest talking about how they're super pissed at the humans for exposing their spy station at Pajim and getting the monastery destroyed. And I don't know, it's just interesting to me, like dealing with bad actors that that want to do very immoral stuff, but then try to like hide it behind.
Oh yeah, I actually really like.
How dare you attack us and like our religion and take that approach to it.
I really liked those scenes. I thought the Vulcans were just like very duplicitous in it, and I liked that
the Vulcans being how big of assholes they are in this episode.
Yeah. I like that Forrest pushed back. He's like,
Yeah.
You don't think you bear some responsibility in this? And by the way, I bet they just freaked when they found out that like T'Pol had to like turn over the data on that, because like in real life that almost, I can't really think of a case where that's happened, but you do have double agents and stuff like that, but that's probably how they're thinking of her. They're like, a human tells you to hand over all our cool spy information and you did it, you are going to the the gulag.
You're going to Vulcan hell.
Yes.
But they also mentioned Captain Gardner there, and Saval was like, Gardner would have made a better cap. So that's part of, like, I guess why Saval doesn't like Archers. He's pissed off Archer got assigned to Enterprise, not like the guy he wanted. He probably would have been like a better, Vulcan lackey, probably like would have listened to Vulcans more.
Right.
But something I'm trying to focus on as Dave and I are watching Star Trek Enterprise, and we're just getting started with season 1 here, but I'm trying to look for larger kind of overarching themes throughout the entire series, throughout 4 years, and I've never really tried to look for things that might have been intentional or accidental, but still kind of like work out and to paint like some larger story and where it fits into the tapestry of the Star Trek saga.
Sure.
But something like I'm seeing here is just kind of how manipulative the Vulcans are and how they're so determined to maintain like the status quo of they're kind of the middlemen in power. They're kind of the arbiters of everything, and they're okay, we have like the Corridon system over here and we're cool with them because they have the really good shipyards and we trade with them. There's some social problems. We don't talk about that. We don't want like the Andorians interfering with that. We sure don't want like the humans, poking their noses around over here, or the humans getting involved with the Andorians. We want to keep them separate over here. So you got to think like Archer, he's been hearing like all this stuff from the Vulcans, all his life about like, oh, y'all aren't ready to like go out and explore in space and stuff. But then he gets out here and he sees how established the Vulcans are and how they're kind of like running the show everywhere, almost kind of like passively, like we're just here to help. we're just here to advise. It is very imperialistic how like a lot of like European powers, how, you know, people that they couldn't just, they had like enough guns, they could just, you know, mow down and conquer. They often would do that. But, you know, like in other cases, you look at like the British and Thailand and stuff like that. We're like, oh, we're just going to come in here kind of help and kind of start, you know, like, introducing some of our influence, and then they just never leave, and they just try to maintain control indefinitely. And that's still kind of how like the world operates, and it's fun to see.
Power rarely relinquishes itself.
Yeah, I love seeing kind of like these fictional politics explored, and I wish that Enterprise, I always talk about this, I said it a lot last week, but I wish that they would have gave Rick and Brandon that year that they asked for. They wanted a year off, kind of develop the show, to build up a writer's room, write a better show Bible, you know, do more world building and kind of lay out the universe a bit more, because there's like a lot of like neat stuff that I think is fun to explore, and I just wish that they could have explored. I wish that we had more stuff like that and less I don't know, like kind of just bland episodes like Sleeping Dogs.
Right, you sort of episode of the week stuff.
Or flat out, you know, like bad episodes I don't enjoy. Like we've had a couple this season, and we're coming up on one in a moment.
But I will say, Fatheree, that this episode also accomplished the thing that I like, which was, you know, that sort of running continuity, straight up the fallout of Pajem. You know, T'Pol was supposed to be recalled for that, so she could be punished, and they managed to get around it by the end. But it's, you know, directly influenced by, you know, an episode like 5 or 6 episodes before. By the way, that was pretty harsh when T'Pol hears the news and she's like, okay, goodbye. She can, when she's cold, she can be very cold.
We do kind of see her like warm up a little bit in here when she does kind of show that she does have like some fondness for the Enterprise crew. When Archer is like, well, should I turn the shuttle pod around? And she is like, well, we're halfway there, so it would use too much fuel. You know, don't do that. But it's like, oh no, she still wanted to like go along. She's just saying that.
It's sort of, there was,
or later at the end when Archer is like, oh, well, I can probably tell Sopek to, you know, beam you up and take you with her. And she's like, no, that would violate my doctor's orders if I left. So, but yeah, those are excuses that she's making for herself.
Right. It is clear she has formed an attachment. She stayed longer with humans, we find out, than any other Vulcan has, or at least, you know, on board a ship. And so it's you know, it is quite clear. Yeah, she has formed attachments. What was I gonna mention? I feel like in the scene where they're wriggling around in the ropes for like 10 minutes, that, I feel like they were like creating fetishes in like a generation of kids watching this.
It bothers me that Archer doesn't just. I'm sorry. It bothers me that T'Pol can't just like stand up. Like Vulcans are supposed to be so strong, you know. I feel like she would be strong enough. She would just.
They did remember. They did remember that in the episode Fusion, when Archer gets his butt kicked by a little creeper Vulcan. But, you know, that seems to be the nature of Trek, is when they want a Vulcan to be strong, they do it. And then they...
Berman Trek, Berman era Trek, they couldn't remember Vulcans are stronger, but...
Right, they're just like, oh, they're intellectuals, they must be little weak dudes. Anything else on this one, Fatheree? Just, you know, 12-year-old Dave, a little bit of that mindset, liked seeing Vulcan commandos shooting it out with Andorian
Vulcan
commandos.
Vulcan and Andorian commandos are cool. Yeah, that was fun.
Just some raw, cool, action-y stuff in it. But yeah, it's the episode could have used some more, you know, like another pass or two or something like that.
Let's move on to our next episode. We got 3 more to cover. The next one, Shuttlepod One, written by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga, directed by David Livingston. While investigating an asteroid field, Tucker and Reed are convinced the Enterprise has been destroyed and try not to face their own oncoming deaths. This kind of seems to be either like either people love it or hate it with this one. I've heard a lot of people express both, but how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I was looking at our comments and I saw some hate floating up for it. I think that I have one very big like plot thing. Like maybe I don't know if I missed something, but I wasn't sure why they were so convinced that Enterprise had been destroyed when it seemed like there was only a bit of junk that was stuck in that asteroid and not like a massive debris field.
I think that's dumb too, but I'm in the hate camp. I am not a fan of Shuttlepod One. I think this is a very bad episode in my opinion.
Once it gets going, I like the episode. I thought that it's a little bit one note as far as trying to early on they frame it like they're stuck in this thing. They have diminishing supplies. They're not gonna. There's no way they'll ever get anywhere, or there's no way they'll ever get found. And Reed is the pessimist who thinks they're gonna die. Our Trip is the guy who wants to try and keep every little thing they can do to keep going. So he's the optimist. But I thought it brought out some stuff in Reed that was about that gave me some insight into his character. That he is a guy who's never quite found his place. He doesn't quite interact well with women, even though he's had lots of girlfriends.
Yes, that seems so inconsistent. It's like he's
there's
banged
people,
every waitress in San Francisco, but he sucks with women.
And he's never created a relationship and an emotional attachment. You could probably dive into like various things that could be going on with that. But that can happen. It doesn't mean that you're capable of like a mature relationship just because you can bang stuff. So, I also thought it was interesting that he was like he's creating these messages that are like, oh, I wanted to let you know I still think about you. Like it's kind of lightweight. Even Trip says you're basically giving the same message to all these girls, just that you think about them sometimes. But I think we hear a snippet of one where it seems like he was messaging his parents and saying, "Oh yeah, Archer told me you didn't even know what my job was." He's like, "I find that hard to believe."
They didn't know what they told him that they didn't know what ship he was on, but they told Hoshi they were like, "Oh, he called and told us he got assigned to Enterprise." So I didn't really get. I think that was just like Rick and Brandon forgot what they had in that episode.
I mean, maybe, but like I think it looked like he was starting to address it. I felt really bad for him because Trip is like. He's kind of just like, you're yapping and I'm just trying to sleep. And he's actually trying to process something that he clearly always suppresses. That he's always kind of the dutiful son. But they don't really seem to care about him that much because he went Starfleet and not like naval, ocean, water.
But I don't really like that background. That also seems just so trite. And just it was more of what I was saying before, and I feel like they didn't really think out his character. They're just like, we just want like stuffy British guy, and well, I do like overall. I kind of like dislike this episode. There are things in it I appreciate in it, like Connor Trenier and Dominic Keating's acting. I think that they're pretty good, and I was surprised when I saw them do kind of a cold reading of the script where they just read all the Shuttlepod scenes, just the two of them on their YouTube channel. I actually got like really invested in listening to that, and I think my problem with this is just the execution of it. We've seen way too many Star Trek episodes, just TV stories in general, of two characters trapped in a room together. It's like that in itself just reeks of triteness. Like, do something to make it fresh. At least give me like some good dialogue. Like get like a guy who can write like some good dialogue, like Joss Whedon or Quentin Tarantino or someone like that to do a pass on this. But no, it was Rick Berman and Brandon Braga, and it was just, I don't know, it's just very dry, just very it's just like the snails on a turtle thing when it's like we'll be so slow, we'll be moving along at a snail's pace. Well, what about like two snails riding on a turtle? Like, hold on, Fred. I don't know. It's just like,
no, I like
very
that, Fatheree.
Thought. I don't know. This seems
I thought that was fun.
It just seems uncreative. It just seems like the first thing you would think of.
I mean, I don't know that I would immediately go to the snails on a turtle thing. Sometimes Star Trek slightly shotguns its information through. I always thought they shotgunned, Geordi, the awkward, can't get a date guy. And I think sometimes they somewhat shotgunned Data's, I just can't fit in, stuff.
I guess I also don't really like the friendship between Reed and Trip, just because I don't think that they're like that interesting of characters. It's just like the good old boy from the Florida Panhandle who wants to be an engineer is like kind of cool, or I guess he is an engineer, not like wants to be. And then I don't know, like really stuffy British dude who's like all like proper and wants to be like good soldier boy and is all about like duty. But can't. But I guess we get like the additional dimension of he has a hard time connecting with people. But it's all like tell and not show. Like you haven't really like shown me much of him. Like forming bonds and friendships and connections he's never formed before in his life. You just kind of tell me that that's happened. And I want to complain about the dream scene where it's just that also feels so like uninspired to me. It's like, oh, he has a dream that they wake up back on sickbay and they're safe, and he doesn't know it's a dream. But then Jolene walks over to him and does like some real sexy stuff, and I don't know, laughs at some dumb joke. Oh, he says the word stinky. We're not actually like funny or clever people, so we're not gonna write a good joke.
That was pretty bad. That part was pretty bad.
So it's just, I don't know. Yeah, it's like cringy to watch. It's just like, I do kind of feel sorry for him, like, oh, did you really have to like wake him up? like when Trip is like, who is Stinky? And then he's just like, oh, I guess it was all a dream. I kind of do feel sorry for him, but I like that they mentioned the waitress Ruby at the 602 Club. We actually meet her in season 2. There's a flashback to some San Francisco 602 Club stuff.
Interesting.
I like some of the scenes of when Reed does like convince Trip, when like the roles are reversed and then Reed becomes the optimist for a moment and Trip puts the candle out and he's like, oh, I guess like we need like the few extra hours after all. It doesn't sound that bad. And it turns out like they only had 2 or 3 hours of air left, so they really did like everything that they did like kind of save air. Like, yeah, it was a good thing you did that or you would be dead. But I agree with you, like your criticism of like it's weird that they're like so convinced of the ship's destruction at the beginning, and that always like looked awkward to me as well. And it's that kind of annoying frustration sometimes people get when the audience knows something that the characters don't, and when it makes like the characters just seem kind of like bumbling, like why don't like Enterprise is fine, like they're out there, like
if they had like done a little bit more some kind of technobabble, something that made it look more like a debris field, some other ship had been destroyed, and to their damaged sensors, they're like, that has to be the Enterprise. There's a few actual parts of Enterprise. Like, you could have sold me on it a little bit better without having to go too much farther.
And then some of like the drunken dialogue, I think some of that goes on too long. Like Dominic and Connor sell it at first, but then like it just when it starts getting like silly during stuff that should be serious, where it's like, well, if it's not nothing, then it has to be something. It's just, I don't know. It's just.
See, I think part of the reason I enjoyed some of that stuff is because I like when actors kind of get to act out of their normal stuff. If they get to be drunk, they get to be cold and show that they're physically uncomfortable in this. They get to yell at each other. They don't normally get to do that. They can kind of really go off.
Cake is Eternal and the live audience is saying, seems like they'd be able to find out how much debris there was and it wasn't enough to be Enterprise. But I think I found a fix for this. That their whole reason why they turned around and came back is their sensor array wasn't working. So maybe they can't scan. So maybe that's why they were limited, and just the visuals, just what they could see from the hatch looked like the ship was destroyed, and they couldn't scan for more debris. I guess that's what happened.
They did, they didn't like at length discuss, I can't believe, the ship is destroyed. There's just, how could it have happened? The only thing is at some point they're like, how old were Hoshi and Mayweather? No more than like 23, I bet, or whatever. And so that was them reflecting on it. But most of the stuff was focused on survival or, just kind of putting one foot in front of the other. So I guess to their credit, they didn't talk, endlessly about it. They just did the best thing that they could in their situation, was start heading towards something. Father, I will come down as someone who likes this episode all right.
Yeah, that's interesting. I said it was like, I feel like people either love it or hate it, and then you proved me wrong. But that's cool. I'd be curious how other people feel about it as well. Joel in our live audience said it was good cold representation, so I'm sure he's freezing his ass off in Minneapolis right now. But
I don't think Father. I think the one thing that no one will champion is the stinky sequence. God, like the basic idea that he imagines some scenario where he makes T'Pol laugh and she kind of opens up to him. That's a good concept, but man, the dialogue has to sell it.
Let's move on to... Oh, I guess one last thing to mention is this does kind of cement the Reed-Trip friendship, and so from the rest of the show on, they're kind of real good buddies. And I don't know. I think it's kind of a boring friendship. It's just like at least Data and Geordi. It was but there's an android and this blind dude. It's that was just more neat to me. But whatever. They're your basic dude bro BFFs.
It's not going to reach O'Brien and Bashir levels.
It doesn't even reach Tom and Harry levels. But that's okay. That's okay. We'll move on to Fusion. I got some Vulcan action. Teleplay by Phyllis Strong and Mike Sussman. Story by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga. Directed by Rob Hedden. The crew of Enterprise meets a group of outcast Vulcans who embrace their own emotions, leading to trouble for T'Pol. This is the cult of hippie Vulcans that are they embrace their emotions. They try to do both. They're we do logic and emotions both. They're called the Vatosh Couture. They seem to be kind of based on Sybok from Star Trek V, and we later learn in Strange New Worlds Sybok is classified as a Vatosh Couture, so it all ties together. But Dave, I know that this is an episode that you do remember well, that we talk about frequently on the show. You mention it all the time. But let's talk about it in greater detail than ever before. Tell us more about how you feel about Fusion.
Right, so just plot-wise, they bring over these Vulcans to... Are they helping... What is it that leads them to interact with these Vulcans? They're helping them repair something?
The Vulcans asked for help with repairs, and then kind of in return, I guess, they were helping Enterprise scan the nearby nebula.
The nebula thing, right. And so, we kind of get two Vulcans, primarily, is it Kov, who's the guy who hangs out with Trip? I guess we get
three. There's three named Vulcans. There's the... Kov is he's kind of like Vulcan Veer, if anyone knows Veer from Babylon 5.
A little bit of a doofus.
And then there's
Teleris.
Captain Tavin, who's played by Robert Pine. So Chris Pine, Kelvin Kirk's dad, Robert Pine, plays this Vulcan captain. And then we have creepy, rapey dude.
Yeah.
Valaris, right?
Talaris, yeah.
Talaris, oh, sorry. With a T, not a V. Talaris, yeah.
So, when I'm watching this episode, I was like, man, I feel like they had to walk some lines on the episode. They needed to depict Vulcan sort of radicals, and they needed to decide on whether we're going to judge, are they superior to Vulcans or inferior to traditional Vulcans? And early on, they're like, they seem superior. They're more chill, but they seem to have the qualities of Vulcans and their logic when they need to. We have to kind of base it mostly on Kov and Teleris' story. And I think they walked that line pretty well by showing, that Kov is kind of capable of growth and maturity, but Teleris is an example where abandoning the Vulcan philosophy kind of went wrong.
That's a good point, yeah.
But then
it's a case-by-case thing.
And then there's a trickier thing about it. There's a sexual assault in this episode, and, I feel like Time has to judge that one, that this is probably something more that women can judge than I can, but I felt like they did a pretty good job up until maybe a little bit of stuff at the end. It shows how from the outside you could think, T'Pol is mainly engaging with this guy, and she wants to, a part of her wants to break free, but he has also been kind of quietly coercing her and manipulating her, and then obviously when she says no, man, he doesn't stop, and he's then he's revealed as the kind of creepy rapist he is. I thought at the very end, it ceases a little bit to be her story, and we see kind of Archer defend her
Oh
honor.
yeah, he becomes a white knight, doesn't he?
Right.
I had never lensed it that way, but you're right. Yeah, that's a problem. Yeah.
And also, although I kind of get why, it's like they just are like, well, you better get out of here, you. And that actually sort of feels somewhat bitterly realistic. Like, well, what are we going to do? Prosecute these Vulcans that we have no jurisdiction over for it?
It's sadly, strangely realistic how
that was. Yes, it is. It is weirdly realistic.
I hate like saying these words out loud, but yeah, I mean, I guess like people get assaulted like that, and there is no recourse, and it's just the universe just expects you to just I guess it's just life as normal. Like unless people, it takes action to prevent that from being the reality. So.
I overall I think this is a well written episode. I think they stage it pretty much as well as you could in the early 2000s, and
I don't know if that's what they wanted the episode to be about. I kind of think it might have just been, it started off as the idea of like exploring these different types of Vulcans, and then that they might have just added that as we need something that's like a big dramatic climax or event in the third act. But
I feel like they wanted to have two stories going on, really, that Talaris and Kov, and to have Kov be the guy who is actually ultimately pretty. He does handle their philosophy well, the Vatosh Couture, and Talaris is clearly been suppressing or like hiding his anger, and he's that creepy little half smile he's got a whole lot. I feel like I'm looking at like Andrew Tate of Vulcan.
There's a lot of good stuff in this episode, just in terms of like quality, in terms of like how well done it was. Like he seems very realistic. Like there are like a lot of like creepy dudes who are like, just the scene where he's in the mess hall with T'Pol, and he's like asking her for some tea or something, and like she's trying to like help him, but how like he doesn't like move to like get out of her way when she's reaching for stuff. Like he's trying to like force her to like stand close to him, and then when she goes over to like pour the drink or whatever, like he goes and like steps closer to her. Like he's always like staying close. It's like weird like creepy stuff, like real, very real life behaviors. Like I'm sure like women can testify to this stuff more than we can. And they also do a good job of making them seem like atypical Vulcans, but they still have a layer of Vulcanness that comes through. And I know like they made like the Vulcan actors on Enterprise, like everyone had to go to like Vulcan school, learn how to Vulcan, and they do have really good job. For Berman Trek, as much as it kind of stayed away from Vulcans, I think a lot of people have problems with how assholes the Vulcans are in Enterprise, but that was a very intentional choice, and I don't even think it's necessarily a bad choice. We'll talk more about the Vulcans arc when we get to some season 4 stuff, but the Vulcans, as far as like, I don't know how they behave, they always seem like kind of that TOS flavor of Vulcanness that Leonard Nimoy invented, that most Vulcan actors have been able to tap into over the years. I think Star Trek's been pretty consistent and good with Vulcans most of the time.
Nimoy created an amazing model to follow up on.
A great template, yeah. I don't know if I've much else. I guess like this episode it was important in helping me realize how like I don't really like jazz music. This is the music that plays in like the nightmare scene in here. Yeah. Like that's some of like the worst. Like I don't know whatever that saxophone was doing, but I hate that more than Faith of the Heart. Like, that's my actual least favorite piece of Star Trek music.
It was also supposed to be chaotic and anarchic, and
I hear that, and like I know, like as a big metalhead, like some people like can't stand extreme rock music, and to them it sounds like that, and like I don't know. To me, like it sounds like if I just like went in my kitchen drawer over here and pulled out a knife and just started like stabbing myself in the ear repeatedly with it. That's what it sounds like to me. But yeah, I don't have anything else on Fusion.
The one thing I kind of want to mention in there is just that I was glad that, like, T'Pol immediately did call sickbay after the sort of mental assault. They showed that was giving her, I think, some agency in the moment, at least.
It is very uncomfortable to watch. Like
it is, and I don't know that there's a comfortable way that can be depicted with any accuracy. To some degree, I kind of don't want it showing up too often in Trek in general. but this is the that is an aspect of life and should be in some way acknowledged. Sometimes it can be done with metaphor. It doesn't necessarily have to be a literal thing. This kind of did that. It's a mental assault, and that kind of gave them a little bit. I think it made it seem somehow a little less heinous. But when we're watching it and we see a character we care about under that level of duress, well, then it is or super horrible. I need to find out someday that Talaris gets blown up by somebody, and I know that's me white knighting it just like Archer, but I'm just saying I wouldn't mind if somebody just wrote that into some story.
Well,
Kov spaced him.
No, that was what was gonna happen, and then Scott Bakula saw the script and was like, "I think this guy would beat up Archer. I want Archer to get smacked around." So they did that instead. Let's move on to the last episode we're going to discuss tonight.
Yep.
Rogue Planet. Teleplay by Chris Black. Story by guess who? Guess the two dudes who have the story by credit. It's Rick Berman and Brandon Braga, but also Chris Black. Directed by Alan Craker. So, man, those dudes. When we finish season 1 next week, we'll come up with a tally of how many episodes they wrote. This was talk about year of hell and void. This was a year of hell for them.
I think I need to see which ones they wrote, because I know there's we've talked about it, but
it's a mixed bag. Yeah, the stuff that they wrote.
There's stuff in it that I definitely like and I thought had some nuance. There's something in this. This is kind of a lower tier one for me, but there's a few bits that I really enjoy in it. Including the premise, just that I like the idea of these weird, kind of, it's almost sad and lonely, like the loneliest thing. The idea of a planet that doesn't have a planetary system, that is just drifting through space, endlessly cold. Planet. Yeah, and yet this one is kind of unique because it's got the thermal vents from inside it that create, I guess, luckily, a very Earth-like atmosphere, as well as harboring, allowing plant life and animal life to still continue.
The synopsis on it, Archer has visions of a mysterious humanoid woman on a rogue planet where it is eternally nighttime. They meet these cool hunters, so it's it's two, or I thought they were cool at least. At first, there were 2 episodes back to back where we meet a crew of people and they seem like some decent dudes. I'll hang out with them for a little bit. They seem cool. And then, it turns out they're kind of assholes, or at least some of them are, with the Vulcans. I guess all these guys suck. They're murdering these intelligent beings. If they were just, if they just came to this planet to shoot hogs in camp.
Yeah.
They wouldn't be, I was like, oh yeah, let's just go camp with them. That'd be fine. But, it turns out that they are, they're doing some pretty messed up stuff. So
Archer does throws him a bone, and he kind of says, "Yeah, we don't really hunt anymore on Earth, but he's like, we respect your traditions, and nobody hurled the food to the ground or anything like that." But yeah, it's the kind of the trophy hunting nature, that they lied about the sentient stuff.
Yeah.
About it too. Well, go ahead, Father.
I like the casting in this episode. I agree with you. The rogue planet is neat. The idea of yes, it's permanently dark. So it's always these dark forests and these dark, dangerous jungles, and it sounds really deadly hunting ground that would be kind of exciting and enticing. But the casting is also something that stands out to me. The Wraith lady.
Yeah.
When Archer kisses the woman and she turns into a slug. It's kind of like when he kissed Saren, that Suliban woman.
Yeah.
And she morphed.
That doesn't normally happen.
I mean, it seems to keep happening with him now. So,
yeah.
But that woman is the same actor who played the Trill, who gives Riker the sexy eyes when he handles the manual steering column in Star Trek Insurrection.
Oh.
So they bring her back for that. But more importantly, the guy who plays the Eska, I don't know, captain, the lead hunter.
Yeah.
He has a really hard name to say, but he's in so many things I love. He plays Holtz and Angel, if anyone likes Buffy or Angel. He was one of the cops in The Dark Knight who beats up Heath Ledger's Joker. He's Mr. Freeze in Young Justice. He does a lot of voice acting, but he's in Babylon 5. Yeah, he pops up in so much cool stuff. But there's not a ton of substance in this. I don't know. It's kind of a neat sci-fi idea. It's a very Brandon Braga idea, the idea of these wraiths, and they look like these big slugs, but they'll turn into a beautiful woman from the poem you heard about fishermen or something as a kid.
I actually really liked
poem,
that.
By the way, the song of the Wandering Angus or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but
Yeah, I'm going to look into it because I really liked that idea. It's just one of those things that kind of, I think, somewhat separates Trek from the other Star franchise, which is that you might have an alien shape changer who's the beautiful woman she turns into is based on your kind of like perfect childhood vision, you know, of what a pretty woman would be. And from a poem your mother told you to comfort you. I'm like, that's a cool and neat idea. It's something very different.
Dave, there's an episode of Lower Decks that shows one of the the Federation outpost scientists that are always doing experiments or whatever on other planets. But there's one of them studying the rocks on this planet, and he sees like the vision of his 7th grade geology teacher. It was kind of like that was like his dream girl. You get the idea. It was like the woman of his dreams. And but he grew up to be like he's studying rocks on an alien planet. So of course when he was in 7th grade he had a crush on his geology teacher. So, but kind of similar to this. I didn't really draw that connection until now, but. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's not like really a ton. I like Reed had more. I like that Reed and Archer were both scouts, and that Reed had more merit badges. I guess like the Eagle Scouts is just like global and like the more like Earth United of the 22nd century. Because right now, like they don't have Eagle Scouts in the UK. They have like the King Scouts or whatever they are. They have their own thing.
Oh yeah,
they have their own Boy Scout thing there. But I guess in the future we'll all be united after World War III.
The Eagle Scouts take over all other scouting type things.
Maybe we don't really know who wins World War III, so maybe it's the Scouts they win.
I just want to. I would compliment. I think some of the writing and the portrayal of the hunting group. They kind of have early on. It's just kind of like a fairly friendly bro-ish vibe, but later on it's kind of like they're always sharing a slightly dark private joke. And they have this little cruelty that starts to fit in there. They start chiding the captain about his visions, and you kind of get this harsher view of them, even as we're about to start learning that they are not these kind of chill dudes that Malcolm should go off and hunt with. But I thought they portrayed that pretty well. They started to become intimidating to me as I watched it.
I guess it is kind of an easy solution when Archer is just like, oh, Phlox, can you whip up something to fix this? And Phlox is like, sure. Yeah, they'll never be able to detect these things again. So. Yeah,
very specific, but, I do kind of enjoy this. This is they're far from the first person that's done this. We're in over our heads. The animals around us are all growling, and now the hunters have become the hunted. Not an original concept, but I enjoyed it. I can enjoy a little bit of payback to people who are cruel and monstrous people.
It'd be fun if like the wraiths, if they had the ability to like, oh, now we're gonna become like the things of your nightmares and scare you. We're not gonna hurt you because we're not assholes like you. We're just gonna scare the ever-loving dog shit out of you and make sure that you never come back to this planet. That would have been cool. It's kind of turned into like a haunted house planet, just make you see all kinds of weird
Well,
stuff.
if it would be interesting if Archer had to suggest that. They're like, oh, we only ever choose, we only choose things that people like. That it's not in our nature to do that. And he's like, oh, I'm going to teach you how to show them cruel visions, and then you'll be safe. But it's like, oh, but I've had to teach them how to do something that's really kind of creepy, and then there will be fallout to that later on. But
if he ever wants to see the girl of his dreams again, I guess he can come back to this rogue planet and kiss the slug again. But,
could he would he be willing to say like, just go ahead and keep that form for a little while? It's
mind out of the gutter, Dave.
It's like what's his name in the Matrix?
They didn't have holodecks yet. They didn't have holodeck technology yet. So
now wait, is it just an illusion or does it actually become that? Does it
I guess it actually becomes it. Yeah,
it actually becomes it. That's what I'm saying.
Because like Phlox was like, this organic tissue is trying to morph into something else. So yeah.
You got to be like Cypher and be like, the steak tastes good.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to play along with the illusion, I guess. Just go along with it and enjoy the ride. But I hope everyone enjoyed the ride of Season 1 so far. I guess we're 2/3 of the way into it, but we got 8 more Season 1 episodes to cover, so Dave and I will talk about those next week when we cover everything from Episode 19, Acquisition, up to the Season 1 finale, Shockwave. So we're going to have Jeffrey Combs come back, but not as Shran.
Oh.
We're going to have some Ferengi, however you feel about them being in the 22nd century. Clancy Brown, another fun guest star, will show up. We have a Vacade, a Ryza, so everyone loves Ryza, right? And some timey-wimey stuff going on, temporal Cold War stuff going on with a big finale. So all of that stuff to talk about next week. Please come back and join us then. But until that time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek and follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.